my pleasure this morning to introduce our next keynote speaker, Dr. Henri Olkoniemi. I practiced this all morning, Okloniemi.
That's very good.
Thank you. Well, if I can get it, I say it 4 more times. Let's see how it goes. Dr. Olkoniemi is a senior lecturer in cognitive and neuropsychology at the University of Oulu in Finland, where he also serves as deputy head of the unit of psychology and leads the perception, cognition, and language research group. He earned his Ph.D. in psychology from the University of Turku. Dr. Olkoniemi's research sits at the intersection of language, cognition, and perception. His work focuses on how we process figurative language, including phenomena such as irony and metaphor, as well as why misunderstandings sometimes occur in the comprehension process. His research has contributed important insights into individual differences in language processing and how we interpret complex non-literal meanings in communication. Beyond his research, Dr. Olkoniemi has also contributed to the field through editorial work, including serving as a co-guest editor of a special issue of the journal Discourse Processes, focusing on new approaches to figurative language research. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Henri Olkoniemi this morning.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you for the invitation. Very good to see so many of you here. For those who wondered where on earth is this Oulu, there is another Oulu actually in Wisconsin, US, but it's in here. So we are quite close of Arctic Circle, so I might be the northest irony researcher in the world. Herb probably comes pretty close second, I assume. And what Oulu is known for is sometimes called as a capital of Northern Scandinavia. We have very many IT companies in here. Aura Rings has started here, and Nokia cell phones, and so on and so forth. We are very keen cycling city. We are very much like Netherlands up here in the north. We produce lots of ice hockey players, but I think that they mostly go to Canada instead of US. And we are currently European Capital of Culture this year. And what we are very well known is that Oulu is home of air guitar world championships held in every year here. So that's about Oulu. And then let's talk about irony a little bit, as I think I promised to talk about that and not just about the place I live. So I apologize for all the linguists in here. By defining irony in a very, I think, swallow sense. So for the sake of this keynote, we can only roughly divide irony as a verbal irony, which is utterance expressing opposite of literal meaning. Like here, chap is walking in the pouring rain and says that what a perfect weather for a walk. And I think it's safe to assume that he's not meaning what he literally says, but is meaning actually opposite of that. And then there is situational irony, which is state of the world that is perceived as ironic, like fire truck on fire or stolen police car or so on and so forth. And in this talk, I will focus on verbal irony only. And I think it's important to also talk a little bit about sarcasm, because these are sometimes seen as synonymous to each other, and then sometimes very different things from each other. And for the sake of this presentation, I'll define it as a form of verbal irony that is more aggressive and negative in nature. Sarcasm is used to criticize someone, like in here, we can criticize this person's choice of umbrella when it's raining, as it's rather small and doesn't work properly in the weather like this. And irony is a very interesting thing, as it's used very commonly. I would like to say that in all the cultures, but of course we don't know, there is no research, but the irony research, for example, comes across the globe. And first mentions of irony come from ancient Rome. So it seems that this is somehow very essential for human communication. Only place or tribe that I know that has been recorded not using irony is Hua tribe from Papua New Guinea, and if my memory serves me right, their language system consists only concrete things, so it does not allow the use of figurative language. But I think that it would be safe to say that this is otherwise used everywhere in the world. And it seems that nowadays people have started using more irony in computer-mediated communication, for example, in social media, than in face-to-face communication. Again, there are not that many studies, but at least 2 studies are pointing toward this direction. Why people use irony then? It seems that it's used more among friends. So it's been suggested that it would strengthen the bond. I say something else what I mean to you, and I trust that you can solve this puzzle that I'm giving to you, and this strengthens our social bond. It's also used to, one of the social functions is to soften the criticism, and it's claimed that when you say something ironic, the more positive literal meaning activates also, which kind of softens the criticism. But there is also evidence that this is not always the case, but it seems to be one of the driving reasons. And people use it often to joke, and that's probably the reason why I'm here in the Humor Research Conference talking about irony. And we can also see that non-comprehension has social consequences. For example, second language speakers seem to feel left out from the communication when native speakers use irony among themselves, and then they have a hard time of comprehending it. And there are also tons of different examples from social media and media when someone has misunderstood irony, like case of Justin Sacco, who got sacked because her ironic tweet didn't work out just like she planned it to work. So I'm not going through all the irony theories on irony comprehension. For the sake of this presentation, it's enough that in irony, obviously, interpreter needs to recognize discrepancy between the literal meaning and the context. So what a perfect weather for a walk doesn't fit into the situation in which you are walking in the pouring rain, at least for most of us. And what the interpreter needs to do is that the ironic meaning needs to be integrated somehow to the context for it to make sense. So now for I'll transform the individual differences, and then let's start from the development of irony comprehension. And it seems that children begin to recognize the non-literal meaning of irony around by the age of 6. There are some evidence that some kids grasp it even earlier, even at the age of 3. And this is typically linked to higher use of irony in family environment, especially by mother. By saying that children begin to recognize the non-literal meaning of irony doesn't mean that they are very good at it at the age of 6 still. The comprehension accuracy is still at the guessing level, at least most often. But there is clearly an emerging ability at this age, or some kind of ability at this age. What irony comprehension needs to be developed is high enough language skills, high enough social skills, working memory or ability to manipulate information in the mind, and metapragmatic knowledge. And obviously, because in irony, you need to go beyond the lexical meaning of the words or literal meaning of the words, you need to have high enough language skills to be able to do that. And we see that with younger children or children that are under 7-year-olds, higher receptive vocabulary size is related to better irony comprehension. But it seems that once a sufficient level of language skill is reached, language skill is not the main limiting factor in irony comprehension. And in research, this is mainly seen as mixed findings for children that are older than 7. So we don't anymore find this effect in a very consistent manner. Then you need to have high enough social skills. So you need to have ability to take perspective of the ironic speaker. And researchers agree that you need to have high enough cognitive perspective taking skill or theory of mind first to be able to develop the irony comprehension skill. However, results for typically developing children between theory of mind and irony comprehension have been mixed. And my opinion why this is the case is that theory of mind is very hard to measure reliably, and most of the measures used don't work for older children because they don't differentiate them enough. And when you use those kind of tasks with older children, we typically get mixed results because they are more like statistical errors or mix-ups rather than real results because there is not enough variance in the data. But if we would have good enough theory of mind skills, I think that we might find more consistent results related to this as well. What seems to produce more consistent results, on the other hand, is emotional perspective taking skills. And I will be talking actually next as well about this a little bit more. But it seems that children's higher empathy skill is related to their better irony comprehension. So, in addition to social skills, irony comprehension requires ability to suppress the activating literal meaning. So that's not important here, so it needs to be put aside. And you also need to maintain relevant contextual information in accessible state. So basically you need to remember that the chap was walking in the rain and he said that what a great weather for a walk, to be able to do the correct interpretation. And this requires working memory capacity. Children's irony comprehension accuracy has been linked to their working memory capacity as well, but there has been only 2 studies, and I will be talking a little bit about this. This is not maybe as clear-cut as I would want it to be, but this is supported by adult research on adults and research on more broader research on executive functions. And then what is also needed is meta-pragmatic knowledge, which is explicit understanding of what irony is and how and why it is used. And this is typically, or all the children's communicative knowledge develops by learning from others. And it seems that family environment is a very typical place to learn this. And it seems, as I said a bit earlier, mother's use seem to be one of the driving reasons as well. But my anecdotal evidence with my kids point toward siblings being a very good teachers of irony as well for their younger siblings. And it seems that this learning it from the family environment is maybe not always that successful, or might not be the most typical place, although the previous research point toward that direction. As in our 25 paper, we measured 10-year-olds irony comprehension, and 49% of them, so almost half of them, reported that they hadn't heard about irony before. So it is likely that for these children, for example, they would get it later on, for example, from their peer relations, from the school, for example, or some other environment. But we also showed that in this specific study that we can easily train this as well. And there is, Penny is now in the audience, so that we have a review coming soon on training studies on irony comprehension. And they all point toward direction that we can quite easily teach what irony is for children, and it's effective. And we did also a study on this, and I went to Finnish elementary school with to teach children, 4th grade children who are 10 years of age in here, about what irony is. I told them that, or teach them about definition of irony and sarcasm, about the contrast, humor function, ironic tone of voice, who would use irony or sarcasm, and we practiced recognition and production of irony. And with control group, I talk with eye movements in reading and reading comprehension, the benefits of reading in general. And what we found out was that the children's irony comprehension increased from the guessing level to around 75% accuracy by only 45-minute lecture. So it seems that this metapragmatic knowledge, although it seems to be important, for example, for the comprehension, but it's also very easy to teach and children are able to use this information and really improve. Currently, it is unclear when the adult level of comprehension is reached. Most of the studies suggest that about age of 7 to 10, the irony comprehension accuracy would increase above the guessing level. But some studies, like studies by me and my colleagues and Zayatskowska and Abersmith, sorry, I cannot pronounce her last name, has shown that at least written irony and irony requiring more complex social reasoning are still more challenging to 10 to 12-year-olds. And studies suggest that aspects like understanding humor and teasing functions develop into adolescence. And we have some data that I'm not showing here that suggests that about 18-year-olds still are not at the adult level, but we need to do a bit more digging of that data still to be completely sure that this is really a case. But it seems that there is the research gap for concerning adolescence related to irony comprehension. There are only a few studies, and it seems that that would be the time where the final stages of irony comprehension development happens. But what I would still want to point out is that we showed with the reading time data that already children show pretty similar processing patterns while they solve the meaning of written irony. And this was seen, for example, in that the children also showed, like adults, trial effects or early late effects, as some researchers call them. What this means is that they show higher reading times in the beginning of the experiment, and then the effect was off toward the end of the experiment. And this is typically seen in rereading of the ironic target phrases. And children seems to be able to do that, and they seem to be able to adapt to the task or ironic comprehension task. So there is some sensitivity there, which is very adult-like, although it's not quite there yet. So then let's talk about adults. So adults are most of the time very good ironic comprehenders. Although for them as well, ironic phrases are harder to comprehend and slower to process than their literal counterparts. And here are two figures from this systematic review and then meta-analysis I did with Johanna Kaakinen. And here we can see, so there is a look back time on the left-hand side of the slide. And if you see the diamond that is on the right side of the zero line, that means that most often readers tend to look back to ironic target phrase. So they do later rereading of the target phrase when they are reading text containing ironic phrase when compared to literal. I will show you example in a second. And then on the right-hand side, there is irony comprehension. So all the studies systematically show that irony is harder to comprehend than their literal counterparts. But here, I will show you an example from the real participants how the reading looks like. The text is in Finnish, so I assume that most of you don't understand what it says. There is a red rectangle there, and inside of it there is an ironic phrase. So you know what to follow. And the gaze is, or where the eyes are, is that circle that you will see in there. And this is 15% of the speed of the real reading. So as you could see, there was quite a lot of later rereading or look backs in there. And then this is what it means in the real life. So although there is more rereading, we did another study looking more global effects using scan path analysis. So what's the path of reading? And we recognized 3 different kind of patterns. So there were fast linear readers, there were selective rereaders, so they returned only to the target phrase or critical context, which makes the target phrase either literal or ironic. And then there were readers who were all over the place. So let's call them random rereaders. So it seems that when processing irony, and when there is irony in text, it focuses the reading. So it reduces the random rereading patterns, and people tend to do more focused rereading. So it's directed more on the target phrase, and the critical phrase is for the comprehending that phrase. So only parts of the context that are important for the comprehension. So although there is more rereading, it seems to be more focused. So although adults are good comprehenders, why some adults don't understand irony, or why don't they get it? It seems that there is a lot of variance. Like there was among children, there is also a lot of variance among adults. And it seems that human-related reasons or comprehender-related reasons, now I'm completely ignoring the textual factors in this talk, are situational factors, physiological reasons, and individual differences. And situational factors are things like sleep deprivation. There is evidence that it slows down your cognitive processing and also your ability to get irony. Lack of context, and this is quite common. So, for example, if I say now that Blues Brothers 2000 is the best movie ever, you have no idea, am I being ironic or not? I might like the movie or I might not. Especially in social media, people forget to give enough context for their ironic phrases, and that's the reason why they get misunderstood. And then what kind of blurs the comprehension is also those who intentionally miscomprehend or want to mislead the irony, so that although you kind of know that this wasn't meant to be literal, everybody else is taking it as a literal, and then you get a bit confused and don't maybe commit to that interpretation that you made. Then there are lots of physiological reasons. Brain damage, for example, when you are in a car accident, your head makes a whiplash, and the brain inside your skull hits to the parts of the skull behind your eyes, destroying parts of prefrontal cortex, and it seems to hamper your ability to comprehend irony, for example. Autism spectrum disorder is a very well studied already. In mid-90s, when these studies started to emerge, there was an idea that maybe ASD individuals didn't comprehend irony at all or had severe deficits in it. But more later research have shown that actually they are able to comprehend irony. The process is just slower, and they have maybe harder time of understanding the emotional parts involved in it. So if you are being ironic toward me, what does it make me feel, for example? Then schizophrenia, there are some studies showing that also affects irony comprehension. Interestingly, schizophrenia affects a function of the same brain areas that work differently in ASD as well. So these might share some commonalities, not completely same thing, but seems to work to some extent similarly. Deafness is one thing as well. It doesn't affect your comprehension similarly as the three previous ones, but it seems to affect linguistic abilities or language abilities, and that way it has been shown to affect also irony comprehension. Then there are individual differences, and similarly to the children, working memory capacity affects irony comprehension. And we showed in our 2016 paper that those with higher working memory capacity are able to start processing ironic meaning already or as early as possible. So when they arrive to the ironic target phrase in a text, they start to reread it more already then, whereas those with lower working memory capacity rely more on later rereading or lookbacks. So it seems that low working memory capacity readers need to rely more on the text context to be able to form the correct comprehension, if this makes sense. Then ability to recognize emotions, facts, and we have now shown in a couple of studies this to be the case. And here we measured emotion recognition using Toronto alexithymia scale. So alexithymia is inability to name and recognize emotions. And those with that, in the figure it says high TAS, so it means poorer ability to name and recognize emotions. And when the point there is above the zero line, it means that they spent longer time of reading critical context or interpretation relevant context for irony. So it seems that those who have difficulties in recognizing emotions read more the context of the ironic texts, and it seems that they need to rely more on contextual cues to be able to form the ironic interpretation, whereas those who are better able to recognize the emotional component don't need that. It fastens the process. Then there are at least 2 studies showing that if you are using more irony yourself, you are faster in processing it or faster in recognizing it. And the language proficiency also affects irony comprehension. And here, as we are talking about adults, we cannot see this effect with native speakers, but we see this on second language speakers and their efficiency, language efficiency. So more efficient second language speakers are better in recognizing irony and comprehending irony. Then it seems that I have around 5 minutes left, so I will talk about irony comprehension among older adults within using that last 5 minutes. And this is very interesting because this is a very recent thing that people started to think that something might happen for irony comprehension when we get older. And it really seems that ability to comprehend irony starts to decline at old age. And it seems that the use of irony also decreases. And those than among normal aging. It almost seems like irony comprehension or decline of irony comprehension would also serve as a diagnostic signal that there is something going on. I cannot promise that though, because there is not enough research on that. But compared to healthy adults, the decline is much steeper. But why on earth irony starts to decline in healthy aging as well? It seems that it's not related to decline of cognitive abilities. That typically starts to happen around 70 years of age. However, Hughes et al. Showed that older adults' higher cognitive abilities are related to their better irony comprehension. And they used a battery of measures measuring cognitive abilities, but working memory capacity was one of the measures that was included in their battery, for example. There are some studies like Phillips et al. That shows that this decline correlates with ability to detect emotions. So here again, it would seem that emotion recognition would serve irony comprehension beautifully across the lifespan. And Hughes et al. Again showed that better emotion recognition was also related to better understanding of irony. But here we need to remember that there are only very few studies that had explored this. So we need to be very cautious when we interpret these. But all the studies seems to be consistent that the decline really happens. But it might be also the case that this could be also related to changes in language processing. Because lexical access starts to slow down, and we can see, for example, changes in reading patterns. But there are no studies on this. We have now data set on this, and I'm really looking forward of going through the results. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to do that for this talk yet, but hopefully I can show you the results somewhere in the future. So then the take-home message. So who gets it? Who gets irony? In generally, healthy adults are strong comprehenders of irony in their native language. Also, individuals who frequently use irony tend to recognize it more quickly. And effective irony comprehension relies on the interaction between cognitive and emotional abilities. It also seems that irony comprehension fluctuates with situational factors even among otherwise strong comprehenders. So at least if you want to get it, you need to sleep well. Okay, that's it. Thank you for your attention and looking forward for your questions.